Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are you two doing?
Great.
Doing good.
Excellent, excellent. Another week has passed and we had a new live stream with some pretty impressive tech. You know, you never know what to believe with Steven, and I've gotten a little bit in the habit of searching his posts in Discord just to see. And, you know, there was a lot of group versus group, you know, oh, they're the environment team trying to one-up the character creator team. And, of course, you never know what's going to happen. Honestly, when it sort of became clear that they were going to post the climate stuff, I think kind of the day before on Twitter, it was pretty clear. I honestly felt a little like, oh, okay, I was hoping, you know, environment sort of nodes, you know, changes, something that we get to see. This actually was pretty cool. So this was a pretty impressive feat. I don't know what y'all.
Yeah, they definitely nailed the sort of stuff that they originally said they were trying to do and were originally setting out to do. So that's a big win, actually being able to get to the point. Obviously, we have to try it in real time with actual people's hardware and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you know, the fact that they've got this tech and that it's actually going to be an important part of gameplay. I wonder what they're going to do during downtimes, if they're going to pause the clock and then use the season system as the way to kind of correct the time span from having done like an update or two or something like that.
What do you mean by downtimes?
If they've got to take the server down for an update.
It's an interesting question.
I don't know that they're going to be immune to that one. The only game I can think of that does that still has a lobby hub sort of thing that you go to.
That's a day issue, right?
I mean, I imagine they'd pause it.
It's not a season. It's not really a season issue.
It's not just a day or season issue. It's a whole, you know, global time issue. Does the whole time get paused? Does it? Do they only take the servers down and bring them up at specific intervals?
So how do they? So like, do they on Tuesday mornings? It's patch day, so Tuesday afternoon starts the new season. If it's like a week to week thing, right? Is that kind of, or do they pause it entirely and your new season one day starts on Wednesday, the next Thursday, like a week?
Yeah. What I'm saying is when they do an update to the game and they have to take the servers down for X amount of time, is the in-game timer paused globally for that X amount of time? And then the other question is, will that discrepancy always be there, or do they have a mechanic they can use to shorten or lengthen some interval somewhere down the road to correct the servers back to how they're supposed to be? Is that something they want to do? Because I figure they would want to keep things as consistent as possible.
But
I think it doesn't pause, because you're basically losing a couple of days, in-game days, because it's going to be hours.
That's going to have huge economic impact.
The reason I say they'll pause it is farming. I mean, if they all of a sudden expect a 2-hour downtime, it turns into 24 hours. and all
Your
of
crops
this
is dead.
Yeah, it's gone. That's a
Things have
problem.
happened and you weren't there. Yeah,
because it's out of the player's control. So that's why I would. Because we know what will happen, right? Is, oh, you made me lose everything. You're going to reimburse me now.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's not going to be as deep as that. So I think the end game time is not going to affect the real time in that manner. But okay.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they reconcile that. They're going to have to do something. This is one of those things where they have to do something that makes everybody happy. They can't just be like, well, blah, blah, this solution works for these folks, and these folks, it's not as good. They got to do something that's going to make everybody happy. The only people maybe they're able to not, worry about as much with is if they have to deploy and update at the same time around the world, and they realize some of the time zones that they're going to be hitting are like peak times for gameplay or whatever, where other people, aren't normally around their peak gameplay hours at that time of day or something. Whatever. And that doesn't mean they couldn't actually stagger the updates based on the region of the server. So it still kind of
I expect updates
coincide.
are not going to happen around region times. It's probably going to happen around the times that people are at the studio.
Yeah, that actually that would make sense. I mean, unless they're going to have studios actually located in the different regions that are specifically dedicated to the maintenance and management of stuff in those regions. It doesn't sound very efficient, but that might be the way they do it.
But yeah, I mean, one of the cool things about what we saw in the environment demo or the weather demo is the gradual change of the seasons, and how they said it was sped up for us in the demo, but we won't even really notice those little tiny gradual changes over the course of a day. But one cool thing was like seeing those mushrooms appear when moved from winter to spring, I think is when that happened. Does that mean that we'll start being able to pick those mushrooms, or are those mushrooms just, ambiance?
I think when they use the word layer, I think about setting up and managing terrain layers in the Unreal 4 editor. So, so I'm sure even better in 5. The idea that the layer isn't just this surface that you give a surface material to, it's the locations where the things will appear in that area, what kinds of things will appear. So with that can also include the spawners, the loot nodes, the harvestables, and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know if those specific mushrooms are the ones that we'll be able to pick, but there will be the mushrooms at that layer's specific locations or ranges of locations where it may appear that you'd be able to get them.
Yeah, and I guess we'll gradually be seeing the color changes in the mobs too?
Maybe.
Like
I feel like there's a bit of a thing that they kind of hinted at some of the parts of, but didn't give us the whole story. So they talked about bears going in caves during the winter and then emerging and doing their bear thing for the rest of the year until the winter again. And that makes sense, and that's cool. And talking about how they would be concentrated in an area rather than being spread out across their normal areas. Okay, that's cool. They talked about herds, like the rare herds, the sheep with the golden fleece, like he was saying, that it's like the animal and harvesting, like a hunting equivalent of finding a node or a vein of some ore or whatever that you're able to sit on it for a while. And so he said, maybe it's just during the spring in the hills of a certain area where you might find them. Okay. So if that's the case, then the thing that I'm trying to figure out, when you change from autumn to winter, when we get that snowstorm, blizzard, whatever, the weather event, like they said, that will go over, I heard anywhere from like 4 hours to 12 hours, I think, is how long the event will occur. During that snowstorm is when the more sudden change will occur. And I would imagine, I'm hoping, it's going to take all the various different bear leashes and kind of redirect them over the course of, however long, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, to the various different caves where they're going to be at. So if you actually sat there and watched and observed them, you would actually see the caves they go into. And if that's the sort of tools and technology they're working with here, that's awesome. That's some good stuff right there. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, or if it's going to be more, here's a blizzard, all of the bears have despawned from their current tether locations and respawned in the caves, but they only did that if there were no players within a certain distance with a line of sight on them. So you can, fade out the ones that nobody's seeing, but the ones that people are still observing aren't just going to disappear right in front of you. It's like, snow's here. Poof. Ninja vanish.
I'm kind of hoping that the, like they showed the bears that changed to white fur in the winter from brown in the spring and summer. And I would hope that that would also change the color of their pelts when they drop.
I knew exactly where you were going with that one.
And that might make a difference in when we choose to hunt what, if we prefer different colors or whatever.
Colors are specific properties. It could be that the brown version's maybe a little tougher, but the white version's more insulative.
Yeah, and it also does have me. I used to complain in Revival. I think, was it Revival or could be Chronicles of Illyria? Like Chronicles of Illyria, I think it is Chronicles of Illyria, where it's like when you are exploring and you move into a different region, you have to change your attire to deal with the climate. And I was like, do I want to do that just while I'm exploring? But I mean, if I know that I have a whole week to be in a different outfit, I might be very interested in having a winter outfit that's going to really look cool while I'm in the snow for a whole week or two, versus whatever my summer or spring attire is. That could be something I'd want to play around with from a role-playing perspective.
Gotcha.
I gotta say, I don't like the idea of all of these animals changing color with the seasons. I just don't.
Why is that?
Diggs is going to say it's magic. Because it's not. I would much rather prefer them take the time to introduce different animals for each season with some overlap than use the same ones and just recolor them, basically.
There are going to be some.
Color?
No,
I know.
They said there are going to be some that only appear during certain seasons. So there might be recolored versions. And that was another thing he said, like with the boss loot tables, that it doesn't matter what season you fight them. They might have a different pattern in that season. They're still always going to have the same loot tables, though, so that way you don't lose out on the variance, because now's the season you can finally beat them.
I don't. I mean, for some, okay, but I would rather see a system of hibernation and just a true change of the seasons. I mean, if we're going to have this whole climate change, as we progress through seasons, I'd like to see that show up in the flora and the fauna as well.
Yeah.
Now, I know it gets eventually just very complicated. We've been going since 2016. Kickstarter was supposed to deliver in 2018. It's 2022, so they can only do so much. I understand that. But I feel like that wouldn't be too difficult to add, monsters and animals at certain time period based off the weather or the climate. As you said, the spawners and everything like that kind of come with Unreal.
Yeah, I think that's part of the plan. They're just showing us some of the cooler stuff that we don't normally see in previous MMORPGs.
That magical creature better drop something magical. That's all
Yeah, right?
I expect them to. I expect the magical properties to change, which again is, part of what should get us wanting to hunt in different seasons and look forward to different seasons for that reason.
What season do you think Stufferton Bears come out?
I mean, it depends on whether it's a rainy or what the precipitation is, right? I think I wouldn't want my Stufferton to be in rain for sure, and probably not snow either. But again, maybe magic helps with that.
What about the freeholds that are like lava and something heat related, and now there's snow falling? Like, does the snow melt? Are freeholds exempt from this?
Things that you plant on your property will be affected by weather. That has already been said. I noted that in the notes. So how is your magma core Eye of Sauron tower going to fare? Probably won't aesthetically change too much, but that blizzard's still gonna kill that poor little plant that you got in there.
Yeah, because they say the snow accumulation and even puddle accumulation is sort of based off height maps, right? So I just obviously if you're using the sort of volcano lava flow skin, the tallest ones are going to have the heat. So I'm just curious how complex this actually gets, or if it's going to be just some really weird, like you have lava, but then it's rimmed with snow or something that's just kind of, actually that might look cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious, we talk about complexity because Steven said this is like, oh, keep in mind, there's still so much more to do.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it, I was like, well, this thing's already pretty badass. What else are you going to do? Like, where else could you take it?
I feel like it's more systems.
We've got systems too, but I think that's kind of the problem of jumping to UE5 is you're like, oh my goodness, now we can do this. I think that's one of the reasons why we got the differences in the VEC and the differences in the Pyre. Is, oh wow, now we can really do this. Oh well, if you could do that, I want to see it. I was going to say, so we had a VEC running around, not in the 3-minute demo, but in the 30-minute walkthrough demo, where Steven was playing a VEC. And we did get to see the hunched over positioning of the VEC that he had talked about previously, but it didn't seem to affect the way it was moving. I thought it moved way too smoothly for a hunched over creature. So I would prefer to see something along the lines of what I call villainous movement, which I got from EverQuest Next's heroic movement. I'd love to have characters that look like they're sketchy or limping movements or crouched over movements, shuffling movements, all that in their stance. And I think I'm kind of expecting that to come from a VEC that's hunched over to not move quite as smoothly as what we saw in that demo, but maybe that'll come. I don't know. But yeah, so what were your favorite environments? The snow is really kind of captivating because I don't think I've seen snow quite
Well,
like that.
but actually, yeah, I was going to ask this before but we kind of ran away. Is sort of one of the things Steven mentioned from the get go is he's never seen anything like this in any MMORPG. Can you think of anything? I can't think of anything I've played.
Usually, weather effects are like a nice little muted touch on things, but not a major part. The last game I can think of, last MMO I can think of that tried to do the water accumulation, and they did it successfully, I believe, was Asheron's Call 2. And that ain't like a recent game whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see this sort of thing. It's almost the sort of stuff that I would have hoped to see in Chronicles of Illyria, because they pitched similar sorts of like amazingness and you know, realishism-ishness, but obviously, you know, we didn't get that far with that one. I really do like what we've seen with this. I don't know how much of it's the engine, how much of it's the artist, how much of it is stuff that they've had for a while that's looked fairly good and then just needed a little upgrade to kick it over to super nice mode here. But you know, it's neat.
The closest thing for me is the rain in Valheim. When it rained in Valheim, like I really felt like I was in a storm, and I kind of felt like I wanted to take shelter for a little while. And I think I would actually role play that, especially in the beginning. Hey, I'm gonna hang out and not get so wet. I'd go in my little shelter under the roof. Is there a debuff for rain?
Yeah, it sucked to be in the rain in general.
Yeah. But there was a point where he turned up the wind really high, and even his the leaves in his crown or helmet or whatever, it was massive.
I call it a headdress.
That started waving frantically. So yeah, I love when they can evoke just through the environment. Hey, maybe I don't want to be out in this, because that's what I felt like in Valheim. Like the wind during the rainstorm just whipping the rain. I was like, I don't want to be out in this. I want to go inside and do some stuff. So I hope we can get some of that in that feeling, and that helps with RP. But again, I think that's what's kind of moving me to wanting to switch to winter outfits when it's snowing. Hopefully I might want to have some kind of cloak during a rainstorm or something like that if I'm going to be out in it.
It's interesting because we've not really seen it in MMORPGs, but when you think about games in general, you have some fairly decent, you know, you think of Stardew Valley and things like that have done seasons, even weather to an extent, and things change based off the seasons. It's interesting that you've not seen that sort of really implemented into an MMORPG until now. The thing for me is this, I guess, is kind of a different topic. Is you know, is it just a change like what we saw? My hope, you know, that for 1 week you're autumn, 1 week you're winter, and that there's not a lot of difference in between either the seasons. Like one winter is the same as another winter, is the same as another winter. And then also within the season itself, is there variance too? Not just the onset and the offset, but is there changes within the actual season? Because I would assume when he says there's a lot more to do, that's sort of what they're looking at. How do we implement that? I was a little happy. I was more relieved to know that Steven, you know, as he's saying, oh, I got these controls and I can turn up the wind and I can turn it down and the snow and the rain. Because that to me, I hope means that if you have this ability for flexibility, you actually do have weather, things that become spontaneous, storms that are worse than others, wind that changes direction. So the storm isn't always coming from the same direction. Maybe it's coming from a different one. That is where I hope they're sort of going when they talk about, there's more to do. Because honestly, if it's cool to see it in the MMORPG, but if it's a pretty static change, it's going to be like, okay, well, a year from now, are you really going to notice it at all? It's going to become more of a like, ah, damn it, it's winter. I can't grow what I need to grow right now. Rather than, oh, this is cool. So I think that's the other thing is how do you keep it interesting and not eventually become this sort of, I'm annoyed by this now. This isn't so cool anymore.
I mean, again, I would hope that we have the flip side of that as well. Like, oh, cool, I get to go hunt this or I get to go pick this now. But what you just evoked for me is, can it be so different that we're actually going to talk about the winter of, 3042 versus the winter of 3057? I think there will have to be some differences again because I expect localities to change based on which races govern a certain which race. Well, and what mobs are appearing. So from year to year, we'll have different mobs appearing due to the nodes being at a different stage, and that's going to be different month to month. And I would expect that to be the same of resources. But I do hope that it gets to a level where we're really talking about, and again, for me, that's more RP opportunities in terms of just staying in character and talking about the game world, where when people who've been away for 2 months, we're like, oh yeah, you missed the winter of 2 years ago when such and such happened. How does that affect the lore? And how is that different server to server? That could be super fascinating. So yeah, I do hope that we get significant differences month to month. I guess that would be, because that would be year to year. So that would be a lot of fun.
And the with the wind, I think there's a lot they can do with that. I do like the solution that they offered for. They were trying to use Speed Tree, but Speed Tree didn't give them quite what they were looking for, so they designed their own tree technology for that. I wonder if Speed Tree is responsible for that most hilarious bug I remember back in the early days of Ark, when the wind would blow so hard, the trees would be flopping over and flattening out because all of the edges were compressing on each other, and it was just turning into a ribbon. And so you just see all the trees go, woo, woo, absolutely hilarious, because it was all just being affected kind of globally all at once with one intensity. It wasn't done gradually based on, the thicker parts and the thinner parts and, stuff that's more or less aerodynamic. So I like the solution they're using. Once they explained it, it sounded, makes sense. Further it is up the tree, the further along, the whatever node it's on the more the wind can affect it, and it's just little rotations. But those things scale up. The further things are, the more they wiggle, and the things that are on the ends of those are going to wiggle more. It's great. It looks good. It'll be interesting to see how these things play out when people are using a spell like a tornado spell, if that's going to actually affect the local wind in the area, or, gusts of wind or something like that they can cast. How much of that sort of cool things we're going to have. But then the other side of things, the variance from season to season, I think, looking at how quickly elections occur and how quickly the influence on an area can change based on that, thinking about what things can be occurring in the region in other ways, different populations of enemy races, the goblins, sladeborn, etc., that are doing their thing, where corruption is at, where and how it has spread, those sorts of things, I think will be what makes the season of 1 year so much more different than the season the next year in the same area, given that it's still the same tier of node and the neighbors are, mostly the same tier of node and haven't had, so much crazy stuff going on in their end too. I think there's going to be a lot of variance. And then the other part of it, like they were saying in the video, was that areas will be available and not available based on different weather. Some of the riverlands might freeze over. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. They're probably still looking into that. Other waterways may freeze over. Lakes may freeze over. They might not. Things might dry out. Things where normally you need to use a bridge will dry out, and you've got a shallow land bridge for the summer where during the springtime it was flowing with water. All sorts of things like that. Ice piling up in areas, melting away like they saw, blocking some passageways. All of this stuff on like the micro and macro scale, season by season, will also be kind of an interesting thing, because it's going to drive where people can actually go to and make their routes in. So it could be that you have to go a different way because this place and this place no longer have any sort of connection during the season, where in previous seasons it was almost always available. There could be a reason for it that players could investigate and deal with, or maybe there isn't. And it's just a thing that is observed, and you'll observe when it changes. So I think that is what we're going to be seeing, that there's just going to be so many moving parts that the year to year, in real world, month to month differences for each season will have that much difference and variation to them, that they will feel different. They won't feel the same. They'll feel maybe similar-ish. There'll probably still be landmarks that are important to visit in different ways and interact with in different ways, and bosses you didn't slay will probably still be there waiting for you.
Yeah.
One of the things that they've mentioned is like mana biomes or magic seasons, and I'm definitely hoping to see some Manastorms. Somebody in the forums asked me what that might look like, and I'm not exactly sure what I hope that will look like, but after they asked the question, I was thinking, somehow I'm thinking about color differences, but it could be fascinating because one, the seasons affect how abilities work. So, in summer, then fire spells could be stronger, and frost spells could be weaker, and the opposite of that in winter. But now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder about droughts of mana in a location or during a certain time of year, and maybe that weakens all spells at that time, or maybe during a mana season we get more unexpected results from mundane or common spells. That could be fascinating. And then for appearance, for some reason I think of a mana focused region or season to have more vibrant colors, and maybe you get washed out colors, or like walk into a zone that's all sepia, like just white and brown instead of our normal colors. But I'm hoping, I really would like to see variance in mana and mana storms and other types of seasons besides the ones that we have on Earth. I'm really wondering, since these seasons can affect our spells, it would be kind of cool to have, I don't know, rune circles or altars or something where groups of players can come together and create a local change in weather, especially during sieges. And that has me wondering also what it's really going to look like and feel like to have a siege during a blizzard. I hope they show us that in the future.
I mean, I hope to play it in Alpha 2. This all is stuff that they're talking about as pending for Alpha 2. There's going to be a lot of the Riverlands. There's going to be a lot of the territory, they said. It's going to have, what they say, about half the surface game world worth of content. There's still so much we don't know about the Tolnar and the Underrealm and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm pretty sure that's intentional right now.
I never even thought.
What about weather down there? That's the one that I was thinking about. I think I made a note in there. Yeah. Were there be seasons in the Underrealm? Wet above, wet below? Or will it be like a spore bloom that changes the underflora? Gravitational or seismic or magmatic events instead of blizzards, rainstorms, and windstorms.
But that'd be more like underground weather than climate. I mean, climate's driven by proximity to the sun. If you want to be super, it would be environments that not climate, but some sort of like a contained microclimate of sorts. But yeah,
there is a correlation, but it's not 1-to-1. Like there won't be, it won't snow in the Underrealm when it's snowing.
That'd be weird.
But there will be. Winter will have effects, and I guess you can imagine if mobs are moving into caves and stuff or going underground in order to get away from the snow, then that's going to have some effect on.
Or even if you have like an above ground river that seeps under the into the cave that freezes
some of that.
But I never thought about the sieges, the declaration of war, and whether you take into account the seasons. Like that wasn't even. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, it just occurred to me during during our discussion today. So I had
like what if your group, your guild, whatever. Like, what if you're really like fire heavy and it's the winter? Like, do you have your character? Like, do you have a bunch of alts? Do you have an easy way to change? Like, because now you have to sort of potentially take into account what class makeup you have.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. And so again, if you have even some kind of way to have your attackers change the local weather, that's even like crazier.
Well, yeah, because we didn't even talk about naval combat, which I put in the chat. That's something. Now one player driven stuff. So if you do have like a stormcaller or somebody that can use wind as a or water, can summon rain, can summon wind. Like, does that change? How does that change the combat that you're going to endure? But then also, if you have random storms, you're getting ready to fight and you're going to board this person. All of a sudden, the wind starts blowing 10 times as hard as it was. Is that really going to have an effect on the combat on your boat? Like, do you start separating because you're getting blown downstream and the others, moored somewhere? I don't know. Again, I guess it's how complex does it get? Do we really want it to mimic real life or not? I'm not going to be doing PvP, so I don't really care. The idea is neat. The idea that you could like you're about to lose and then someone shows up that's a stormcaller and just is able to completely change the outcome of the battle because they're able to, they specialize in wind magic or something like that. Can you hire NPCs for your boats that special? I'm thinking of the book. Oh gosh, it was a Netflix show. I'm thinking I can't remember it. Anyways, they have these boats on the sand, and they have people with that magic that blow it, pushing boats across the sand through magic. So are you able to hire someone that can get you where you're going faster? Like, does that become a profession? Like, okay, I've specialized in wind magic. Kind of like akin to in EverQuest. Like all I really did as an enchanter was as a druid was to port people. Like that's I didn't really play. I mean, I did combat, but like the bulk of my time was actually using the skills that I was given as a combat class, but actually used it more for a profit based, transfer, getting people from place to place. I could see something similar if wind effects are going to affect speeds of the ship. Things
Speaking
like that.
of, druids are confirmed for Ashes of Creation.
Oh, they better be.
Well, NPC druids anyway.
Yeah. That funky looking druid we got to see. Yeah, the interesting sort of thing with sieges and weather is I wonder what sort of what the mechanics will be for things that can try to control and reverse weather. If it's going to be like an AoE aura that you can equip as some primary secondary combination in particular, or if instead of a catapult or a trebuchet, you've got like a weather dominator that you roll around and it kind of covers an area but it's vulnerable to attack. There's some things like that could be interesting logistical tools that you use if you're trying to fight in an environment that's not really doing good. Now, especially if you're defending a siege, I understand if you want to attack a place and maybe you want to wait until a more opportune time than the weakest time for all of your spells and your specialization. Sure. Okay. When you're on the defensive, though, I would hope that you would be able to have things to help kind of control a little bit more and turn the odds in your favor. I don't know if it would be a different sort of thing, like a religious node would use prayer and they would like do some ritual or something requiring materials to affect the weather, where a science node would just, have to have a bunch of, rare metals and stuff that they can shoot into the air, and that kind of changes the local environment a little bit. Or I don't know what military would do. Maybe they fire a bunch of burning arrows into the air and try to, kill the blizzard for a moment. Which I don't know what a military node would do about it. Maybe they're just good at fighting through weather effects in general, and that was their specialization. Trade node, hey, you better have spent enough money to get all the defenses you need. You're a trade node.
Phantom asked in chat, and it kind of blew my mind. How do you create a storm that travels from zone to zone?
Well, again, if we're talking weather, because they showed the effects of the grass, right? As it was a wave, like you would see it. He kind of talked a little bit about how they did that, the function that they used to create this visual that it's a blast of wind that's moving down the slope and the grass is moving with it. But how do you actually then turn that, globally and create a weather phenomenon that also travels? So you have sort of this almost meta-based storm, and then within that you have these smaller waves of blasts of air, so that the storm itself is not, from one end to the other exactly the same either. That the wind, there are wind differences even within storms.
They probably are just going to model it based on high pressure, low pressure systems and stuff that we see in real life, and maybe add their own touch or their own abbreviation of the system to make it work for the game. I don't think there's just going to be these static nodes in places in the world that approximately push air out in all directions from them, and then it gets neutralized in areas where they're in more conflict or it's further away or something. I don't expect it's going to be like that. I think they're actually going to have somewhat of a realistically simulated weather system, and part of that will actually drive where the wind is coming from and going throughout a storm.
It seems so complicated.
Although
it is, but it isn't.
it's a high fantasy, high magic world, so we could have a storm that always exists, that travels a particular route in some region across zones. Um, may, maybe some god put it there, or maybe some god controls it, which would be fascinating if we could anticipate this is, during this month, in the Varan year, we can expect the storm to be on this region, and a few months later, it's going to be in that region. That could be kind of fascinating.
A storm almanac, huh?
I was also thinking like of trebuchets. We saw mundane ones in Alpha 1, but what if you have some that are firing ice balls versus fireballs? That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Too. So we'll see what they're able to come up with for Alpha 2.
I mean, I feel like if they're going to give us libraries and scribes, if they're going to go to this much effort for weather, there has to be meteorologists. That's just somehow, like either predicting weather, changing weather.
Yeah.
Somehow, that the player interaction can change that to some degree.
Yeah.
The thing where I'm the most interested in all of this is farming. I was already pretty excited. They're not doing breeding within crops like they are within animal husbandry, which kind of sucks. But this kind of makes up for it a little bit, because I say that in two areas. One is, well, I guess multiple areas. So crop rotation is Meat Hooks put in chat becomes much more important now. Making sure the timing's correct so that you're able to harvest within the certain window. But then also, again, storms. So do you, we know that that terrain will affect crops, right? So if you put your freehold, for the example that's been given, next to a river, your crops will be better watered because of that source of liquid that's there next to your freehold. So, like, are there benefits to, like, if you put your freehold just in some big open plain, are you more prone to the wind? Like, is that going to affect taller crops so that now it's harder for me to rotate corn in because it blows over?
Maybe.
Or if I'm in an area that doesn't drain well, so now I have to worry about flooding. Like, does that? I'm just curious how in depth. I'm happy with just that, because we'll obviously have to have crop rotation. But I'm curious how much the weather then interacts with our own environment. We know there'll be puddles, so are you able to program it so that if you have a low spot and you put crops there and it gathers too much water for too long, your crops suffer? They don't grow as quickly, they don't grow as well. I'm just, I'm curious how that complexity sort of kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot to do with systems like that, and it'll be interesting to see what they do to resolve it.
Because what would be neat is you could actually see it. Like, there's certainly games with farming and droughts and pests and things, but it's usually like a percentage or some sort of number that pops up, and this could actually see a puddle slowly overtaking your little seedling that just brought it up. Or like I said, or the opposite. Can we see droughts that occur? So now, I spent 20 good seasons, producing the best potatoes there are, but now all of a sudden I've had 2 springs and summers of no rain.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that in the sense of, and I think you probably experienced this since you have a garden, Phantom. Not to that extent, because I don't think you're planting a lot of stuff in winter. But again, in a fantasy game, there could be crops that grow better in winter that are ice related, or better during snow, I guess is what I'm thinking of. So yeah, will that be affected, that weather? Okay, I want to stop growing this because it's winter season, and I want to take advantage of this. I wonder how much that is going to impact your farming. Yeah,
it'll It'll be interesting with not just farming, but I wonder how it's going to affect all of the trades. If you've got an open forge anvil sort of thing, are you going to require more coal to keep it operated and keep it burning because it's now going to be colder and it's going to be harder to deal with? Or
who uses coal?
Maybe not coal, whatever they're using, wood or flux or I don't know.
It's going to be magic.
Magic, fine.
Does your Manastorm make it so that that they're no longer lit?
Yeah, maybe we'll have to use coal because there's a mana drought. Oh my goodness.
That sort of thing. It's just too hot outside to do the alchemic fermentation processes required, so you just can't make a certain thing until it gets cooler. We don't know what the summer is going to be like. That's the one thing in the demo that I thought was a little weird. It felt like we saw a double length spring with no weather effect in the middle. Then we saw autumn. Then we saw winter. And then we saw a double length spring again.
What would you expect summer to be like different than spring?
Things getting maybe a little drier and toastier. Things that were, green start to maybe gray out just a little bit more.
That happens in summer?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, where I'm at. Things are nice and lush and green in the spring, and then gradually through the summer it kind of dries out, and then autumn comes around, and then things light on fire because it's Southern California.
Yeah, I don't think I noticed that in Tennessee or in Maryland, but okay.
Well, it comes with the area here.
I'm sure it does in California. I would be surprised, but I wouldn't expect to see that in the Riverlands.
How to see it accentuated, I would imagine, would be longer days, and what longer days would do to things that you would be seeing generally drier terrain and things starting to be just kind of drier in general, less watering holes that creatures are gathered around in the summer than they were in the spring.
I would not expect to see that in the Riverlands, but okay.
Oh, you're just talking about the Riverlands in particular. I was kind of talking
you said in
about
the demo, and I'm saying in that demo that was in the Riverlands, so I would not be expecting to see a drier summer.
Yeah, that's true.
In that specific demo.
And because we weren't seeing day and night, there wasn't really any way to see longer days. So yeah, that's true.
But it did have me thinking about, because some of those transitions, it got a little darker, so it does have me also anticipating seeing what, because I think I have a feeling of running through games with snow during the daytime, but not a lot of it getting like really dark, running through the snow in the dark at night in other MMORPGs. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in Ashes. But I was thinking, if we got periods of like droughts of mana, again, how that would affect what we're talking about in the game. Just remember that time when our magic didn't work as well as it used to, or like I was saying, oh my goodness, can you believe that we actually had to resort to coal because we had to go back to the ways of Sanctus because for this month or 3 months it didn't we had no mana. That could be really great stuff for RP, which
that could actually be a really good way to put a boss in an area, is that it slowly consumes the available magic, and the longer you wait, not only the tougher it gets, but the more it's going to impact the locals. So they won't even be able to resolve it. You'll need people from the outside that are able to, withstand being slowly drained as they go in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's all
Or
pretty
a
cool
boss
stuff.
where you don't have healing, it's only potions and clubs.
So, any last thoughts? Anything else?
Not necessarily last thoughts. I'm sure there's plenty more we can talk about.
On
But
what we saw.
the one that I'm kind of thinking I want to talk about a little bit next time is the Aelar city that we saw. There's that one picture of it. It looks pretty, but I also notice it all kind of looks like the same color of stone for the most part the entire way through. So it makes me wonder if that's still it in a sort of early concept state and all of that stuff is going to get more color and detail, or if it's just everything is made out of that type of stone and they do it in that sort of I feel like it's like a Mediterranean-ish sort of architecture. What is that just how they roll? Is just having things look like that? Maybe there's finer detail when you get close or something. I don't know.
Also has me wondering about different regions. So maybe cities in different regions would have different stone available. Who knows?
That giant statue up there, it's like 2/3 of the size of that chess rook tower, kind of a little right of center of the city.
I don't know why, because it's not really even close to the same, but I saw that picture and my first thought was it was a complete Gondor. Like, instead of being a half circle, like they just took away the mountain and completed the whole thing.
I like that.
Just the way the levels, the big up bridges that are there, and the statue, carvings. I don't know why that was my first thought. Was like, oh, they took some inspiration from this. But of course, we're seeing such a far away view. Who knows? Who knows even how big it is? I was trying to see, are there people in that concept art? Like, did we see dots that were supposed to represent people?
I don't think so, because
we see boats. We see tiny little boats. So if you want to extrapolate a person from that, go for it.
But this is after we return, isn't it?
No, this is before the fall. This is an Aelar city before the fall.
No, it's an Aelar. Did he say before the fall?
I thought he said before.
Yes, and we return to it.
I thought he said before the fall, but then he also said this is the place that we start in A2. So I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, I think it's an Aelar city, but I think it's after we return, which means there could have been colors before that.
No, I actually think he said. I do think he said it was before that's where one of the portals was. So that's where we're coming back. So we would see a ruined form of that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yep. Well, I guess we just talked about it right now then.
There, when I was looking through the images just to refresh my memory, there is that image that we also had of the Nakua Cape.
Oh, that thing's hilarious.
The thing that bugs me about it, or that I'm concerned about, is the fish on the back that must stink as you're wandering around with that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The stink, the half a jaw that if someone just yanks your cape from behind, or if it gets caught on something while you're running, because it's basically just net, it's just going to take your head right off.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I would get that. When that aesthetic package comes around, I will say, no way. I think it already came around.
I would love it if we could, like, our backpacks have different components that we can stick on there, and then will show up in game. And I would love if I could have that cape and stick different components on it of my own. Then yeah, that would probably be something I would definitely want.
Gotcha.
Give me something else that doesn't have stinky fish on the back.
Yeah. Those fish are gonna.
Especially like fall backwards and they just get smushed and I guess it would be great for practicing running because I just imagine running through, the woods or something like that, or wherever you're running, and just have predators running after you for your
Yep. And
chasing
if
the
you
fish.
trip, your head's going to come off.
Right. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. I get you on that.
Hmm.
It
There's a
is.
magical way to deal with that. I would think that jaw on your thing. So um, maybe I could magically dampen the smell of the fish. Sure.
Maybe they're just plastic fish.
True. Hmm. We could keep going indefinitely. Yep.
Yep.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Or Steven's 2 right feet.
Hmm. Hmm. Okie dokie.
Later, everybody.